Hello, my name is Charles, and in today's video is a little different. I want to explain how banks work, or at least my understanding. I'm no pro, no expert, no genius. Right? I don't claim to be some divinely inspired authority, but I sure do have an idea and a little bit of research behind it. Because a lot of people, right, we go around, we live life, we're ordinary folk, and we wonder, how do we put all our money in banks? Because now the banks store our money, and they're these trustworthy guys, right? And how do banks make money? Very very few times we ask, like, how do the banks, like, how are they doing it? What's their business model? And it's like, actually, for a lot of people, let's say they're struggling to get a loan from the bank. If you can actually take a moment and realize that banks need to lend you money to make money. Like, banks' business model is essentially off lending money, and it's a trust model. Its model is built on public trust. So what the banks do is the banks collect everyone's money, and they're like, "Yep, we'll keep it safe. We got all these ways we can help you invest your money. Yada yada. We're the financial pros. Trust us." And so you put your money in the Wells Fargo ATM or whatever you use. And let's say you put in $10. They may lend out like 9 out of that $10 to somebody else. And let's say they give someone a $10,000 or $100,000 loan, right? Then they have a huge interest rate. And then, and that interest rate pays them money. So they lend money to make money. There's this thing called the FDIC. So after the Great Depression, when the banks failed, in 1929, people were like, I don't ever want to lose my money. I have no trust in the banking guys. So the government goes up to the banks, and the banks are told, hey, now you have to guarantee they have some money. And I believe it's $250K. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can look that up. But I think as of right now, the banks are only required to insure your money up to $250K. So what does that mean? That means if you had more than $250K in a savings account right now, in, let's say, Wells Fargo, let's say you had $1 million, you have you are flying high, and you're chilling with $1 million, and the banks fail the next day, they'll only have to give you $250K, and then after that, they're like, sorry, my bad, we left it at Susie's house. Like, we don't have your money. Oops. Because their business model is essentially built on lending. Like, they have to lend money out and then collect interest to make money, or repossess things when people don't pay them back. And then what they also do is they take all your money, or they don't take it. You give it to them because they have to, right? Everyone has to trust the banks. So everyone has to trust them, and then they put their money in the banks, and the banks are like, now that we have all this money, we could buy a bunch of property. Like BlackRock, for example. We could buy a bunch of property with the money people give us. And, we could buy a bunch of property and then rent it out. Or we could, buy a bunch of stuff together. Like, pool all this money, buy a bunch of stuff, rent out the houses, or, and then make money. And, banks need to lend to make money. That interest rate that you're paying on your mortgage or any of those things, like, that's how they make money. They essentially, under the veil of, we are trustworthy guys with your money, you should give us your money and put it in the bank, is they take that money. Let's say you give them $100,000. They're actually, maybe they only keep like $10,000 of what you gave them. And they're like, okay, well, now we're going to lend it out to Joe down the street. We're going to collect interest on the money you gave us. And so they're basically borrowing from you to give to another person to collect interest on that person. So they're making money off your money. They need to lend your money. And so it's kind of a big scam. It's kind of like a big scam. And then in addition, what's it called? Banks like BlackRock, will be like, oh, they'll buy a bunch of properties or a whole neighborhood or just apartment complexes, and then they can do rent control. They can basically say, like, every year we're just going to raise it $50 because if we own the whole neighborhood, no one can do anything. Just you got to move now if you don't want to pay it, or you got to displace your kids, or you got to do this, and so they can just do that, and that's how they make huge sums of money. Is they just get everyone to trust them. They'll societally, everyone's like, the banks, it's safe to put my money in the bank. And so they get everyone to put their money in the bank. And then what they do is they just pool that money. And they buy either assets or they lend it out to a bunch of people, or even businesses. They lend it out to businesses. And then the businesses give them a return. So they're just taking your money, the money you give them. They're taking all of our monies. And then they're just making money off our money. Like, imagine if we just did that. Imagine if ordinary citizens got together and were like, hey, man, fuck the bank. Why don't we just give our money to, people we care about and pool it like that? Like, it'd be great. So, next time you think of banks and you're wondering, like, how do the banks make money? Banks make money off you giving them money under the guise that they are trustworthy, and they lend out your money. Keeps a little bit of it or some of it for you, and then make money off the interest and stuff like that. So that's pretty much how they do it. At least to my understanding, it works. It seems to work really well. A lot of the banks are super, super rich, and I watched The Gambler. It's an old movie. If you guys have ever seen The Gambler, it's a wonderful movie. My dad absolutely loves it, and I'm so grateful I got to watch it with him and my girlfriend. Two different times. Watch it with my girlfriend first, and then watch it with my dad. But there's a quote in The Gambler, and like one of the characters is talking, and he's like, "It's as empty, it's as bottomless or as empty as a banker's heart." And I was like, "That is facts. That is facts," because their whole idea is under the veil that we are trustworthy people with your money. We're going to just take your money and lend it out to other people. So we're going to profit off what you give us, and we're not going to give you that profit. We're just going to make money off it. And if we all fail, if this whole, charade fails, we only have to give you so much back. So that's how banks work. Look, if you're ever curious, like, this guy on the internet doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just some loony, right? You should look up, like, how much does the FDIC have to insure people's money. You should look up the Great Depression and, where it comes from. And then you should look up the bank's business model. And you'll see what I'm talking about. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty wild. But I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a video on how the banks make money. And, I think it's just pretty interesting. So God bless. Hope you have a wonderful day. Until next time, take care.